Ever since I ended up in a wheelchair due to an accident 3 years ago, my husband and mother-in-law have become much colder towards me. One night, my husband said something I couldn't believe. "Sorry, but could you please leave this house for a moment?" "What? What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "I mean exactly what I said. My mother and I talked it over and decided," he replied. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" I asked, trying to understand. "Yes, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time now. You can't earn any money, so I don't need you," he said harshly, as if he was squeezing blood from a stone. "I understand. Thanks for everything, and thanks for leaving me with nothing," I said, getting up. I left, knowing it would take them some time to realize the meaning of my words. My name is Linda Gray. After graduating from university, I have been working at my current company for 7 years. "Well then, I'll be heading out. Thanks for your hard work." "Thanks for your hard work too," a colleague replied as I closed my laptop and got up from my seat. I looked at the clock by the window and saw it was already 4 hours past my regular working time. An afternoon meeting had run late, and I had been preparing for a conference and responding to emails, which took longer than I expected. I left the office, got in the elevator, and went down to the first floor. As I walked through the automatic glass doors at the entrance, I saw that the sun had already set. I checked the train schedule on my phone as I left the company gate and headed to the nearest station. On my way, I saw 2 of my husband's colleagues walking in the same direction. I wondered if Jack, my husband, was already home. We had stopped talking about work at home recently, so I had no idea if he was busy. Talking about work at home had been making Jack cranky, so we naturally stopped discussing it. As I rode the train home, I stared out the window, lost in thought, watching the scenery go by. When I was dating Jack, we used to finish work at the same time so we could go home together. But for the past year or 2, our schedules have been completely different. On the train, I noticed a young couple near the door, maybe college students, having a fun conversation about a movie they saw recently. Their happy scene reminded me of my own past, and I had to close my eyes tightly to stop the emotions from overwhelming me. "I'm home," I called out as I opened the front door, took off my shoes, and saw the neatly lined up shoes in the entrance. It seemed everyone else was already home. I heard the living room door open behind me and the sound of slippers coming closer. "Welcome home, Linda. You were late today," my mother-in-law, Jessica, said warmly. "I'm home, mother-in-law. I'll start preparing dinner right away," I replied. "Oh no, you don't have to rush. You're tired from working overtime, aren't you?" she said kindly. "Not really," I said cheerfully. The afternoon meeting ran late, but things should settle down soon. I walked with Jessica to the living room. After getting married, it was just Jack and me. But last year, when his father got sick and was hospitalized, we moved into his parents' home and have been living as a family of 4 ever since. "Welcome back, Linda. You've had a tough day, haven't you?" My father-in-law, who was reading the newspaper on the living room sofa, greeted me warmly. "I'm back," I replied with a smile. Last year, he had a sudden brain hemorrhage and needed emergency surgery. While his condition was serious for a while, he is fully recovered after his rehabilitation. He is calm and friendly, and I liked talking to him since the first day we met. He used to be the head of the finance department before he retired, and he often gives me useful advice on managing the household budget. When I visited, we finished preparing dinner and gathered around the table as a family. Jessica mentioned that Kelly, who came over for lunch the other day, had a daughter named Jolie who had grown a lot. "Kids grow up faster when they're not yours," I responded. "Kelly is as beautiful as ever, and having a child really makes her look even more graceful," Jessica continued. "I guess so," I replied. "Kelly is Jessica's niece and Jack's cousin. Jessica often seems disappointed that Jack and I don't have children. She's not very happy that I continue to work after our marriage and often hints that she would like us to have a child whenever we meet." Honestly, I've always found it hard to deal with Jessica, especially since we started living together. She tends to bring up the topic of having children, especially on days when I come home late from work. You could have had a child if you had started earlier, Linda. But I suppose it can't be helped because you're busy with work, she said. I nodded along, feeling uncomfortable. I glanced at Jack, who was quietly eating his meal without looking at me. Jack and I were colleagues at the same company and got married in our 3rd year of dating. We were told that it would be best if I became a housewife if we had a child, but we have both continued working since our marriage and haven't had any children. Both of us have wanted a child and tried everything from herbal medicine to medical tests, but nothing has worked. Despite a sense of loneliness, we decided to keep living as a couple and focus on our work. However, I started to feel a distance growing between Jack and me. We got married out of love and promised to make each other happy, but our relationship has gradually become cold. I think it started when Jack began having trouble at work. He didn't tell me anything, but I heard from a senior colleague in his department that Jack was struggling because he couldn't keep up with his peers. Jack is a gentle person who doesn't handle pressure well and tends to push himself too hard. I knew without him saying anything that he was feeling anxious and frustrated about the situation. But whenever I tried to offer him support, he would refuse to talk about his worries, insisting that he was fine and that I shouldn't worry. So he continued to keep his feelings to himself. I couldn't push him to open up, and I felt helpless that I couldn't be there for him. Even so, on our days off, we would make an effort to travel together or spend a relaxing day at home, enjoying our time together as a couple. When I felt drained from our unsuccessful attempts to have a baby, Jack was always there, quietly supporting me. That's why, even if I couldn't solve Jack's problems directly, I wanted to be by his side, providing comfort and peace. The turning point came when I got a promotion at work. I was recognized for my achievements on the projects I worked on and was one of the fastest among my peers to get promoted. That's amazing, congratulations, Linda, Jack had said. I can't forget the look on his face when he congratulated me. I was so touched that I could only manage a simple thank you. As my work got busier, the distance between Jack and me seemed to grow. We spent less time together, our conversations became fewer, and when my income surpassed Jack's, we hardly even made eye contact anymore. I would watch Jack as he finished his meal in silence and then left the table without a word. I can't help but wonder if I hadn't been afraid of being pushed away and had tried harder to support him, would we have a different relationship now? When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the bright white light of a fluorescent bulb. After blinking a few times, I looked around and realized I was lying in a hospital bed. I looked down and saw an IV in my arm, and both of my legs were wrapped in layers of bandages and casts. The moment I tried to move, an intense pain shot through my body. Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer pain. My body felt as heavy as lead, and it seemed impossible to move. What on earth had happened? I tried to recall my memories leading up to that moment. I remembered going to work as usual, finishing a meeting and report, and leaving work on time for the first time in a while. After leaving the office, I was heading towards the station, which was busier than usual because of rush hour. Then I heard the screeching sound of sudden brakes from behind me. I turned around and felt a violent shock. I realized I'd been hit by a car. Fear and pain spread through my body. I worried about the condition of my body now. I heard footsteps approaching, and suddenly the curtain around my bed was opened. "Oh, Mrs. Gray, you're awake, but you shouldn't try to get up yet," said a young female nurse in a rushed tone. "I understand you're confused, but your doctor will explain everything shortly. Please stay calm for now." Okay, I replied, and the nurse left in a hurry. A few minutes later, the doctor arrived and explained what happened. Apparently, a truck driven by a sleepy driver crashed onto the sidewalk, and I was hit from behind. I had been rushed to the hospital immediately after the accident, and it had been about half a day since the surgery. "Excuse me, but have you contacted my family?" I asked. "Yes, we have informed your husband and his parents about the accident and that the surgery went well. However, they seem to be out somewhere and can't come right away," the doctor said. "I see, thank you," I replied. Jack was away on a business trip, and his parents had been on an overseas vacation since last week. From the doctor's tone, I could imagine their reaction to the news. Even though they were out, it didn't sound like they responded as you would expect when being told a loved one has been in an accident. I laughed bitterly, thinking about Jack's reaction. It didn't seem like he would be worried about me. The doctor continued to explain that while there were no life-threatening injuries, the damage to both of my legs was severe. They said the chances of walking again were not good. As I listened, it felt surreal, like they were talking about someone else, not my own body. Jack visited the hospital 4 days after the accident. It was surprising to see his pained expression when he saw me, covered in injuries, lying in the hospital bed. "Sorry," he said, looking genuinely distressed. "I'm late." "It's fine, don't worry about it," I replied. "I'm sorry for interrupting your business trip." It had been a while since we last talked, and the atmosphere was awkward. Our conversation stalled, and we both avoided eye contact. Jack then excused himself to talk to the doctor, leaving the room. I couldn't bring myself to call out to him and just watched him leave. It's been 2.5 years since the accident. My legs are still disabled from the accident, and I've been confined to a wheelchair. Since the accident happened while I was leaving work, I managed to stay with the company for a while, but it became too hard to continue, so I resigned about 5 months ago. Since then, I've been spending my time at home, but a few things have been bothering me. One thing is Jessica's attitude towards me. It's gotten much harsher than before. "Linda, do you have a moment?" "Yes, of course." "I'm about to head out, but could you fold the laundry for me? It's just folding, so you can do it even if you can't move your legs, right?" "Yes, please be careful on your way out." "Well then, please get it done." Ever since I started staying at home, I've been getting more and more snide comments from Jessica. She seems unhappy that her daughter-in-law is at home all day and not working. Now, every time we meet, her requests come with a side of sarcasm. I sighed as I folded the laundry. The other thing that's been on my mind is Jack's job. According to a former colleague, Jack seems to be struggling at work more than ever. He's being outperformed by younger colleagues and subordinates who joined after him. He seems to be viewed as a burden by those around him. He used to keep to himself after coming home from work, but lately he's been taking out his frustrations on me more often. "Must be nice, Linda. You don't have to worry about work relationships anymore, and you get to eat without having to work. I heard from Mom that you've been lazing around all day doing nothing. I wish I could have that lifestyle just once." I no longer saw any trace of the kind Jack I once knew. His sarcastic remarks left me feeling sad for the man he had become. One night, he said, "I hate to ask this, but could you please leave this house?" I was at a loss for words, unable to understand the meaning of his abrupt statement. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. My mom and I have talked it over and decided." I turned to look at Jessica, who was sitting next to Jack. "Linda, ever since you quit your job, you haven't contributed to the living expenses or helped around the house. You've just been staying at home all the time. To be blunt, it's a nuisance for you to stay here any longer," she said. I don't. Don't you think it's rude to live off others without making any contribution to their household?" Jessica continued, a triumphant look in her eyes. Jack remained silent, avoiding eye contact with me. "Jack has a tough job too. Just because you're married, he doesn't have to support you anymore," she added. I looked at Jack, who was staring down. "Jack is asking me to leave. Is this your way of saying you want a divorce?" "Yeah, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time," he replied. "So after all this time, you have no feelings left for me?" "Why would there be? Of course not. Jack said, his words spilling out like a flood. Do you know how miserable I feel every time I see your face? You must have looked down on me, thinking you were better than me every day. It felt like the threads of our relationship were unraveling one by one. I tolerated you because you were contributing to the household expenses, but things have changed now. You're just someone who neither works nor has money, he said, clenching his fist, his words cutting like a knife. I don't need you now that you can't earn money. The last thread snapped. I understand, I said. For the first time, Jack looked at me. But I have a condition. All the divorce procedures will be handled through a lawyer. If you agree to that, I will pack my things and leave within the week. Sure, that's fine, right, Jack? Jessica said. Jack nodded silently. Well then, that's how it is, Jack, I said, jolting him out of his silence. Thank you for everything up until now, and thank you for leaving me with nothing, I said before walking out. A few days had passed since I left the house. When I checked my phone, I saw a call from Jack. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before picking up. Yes. Linda, I'm sorry. Could you please come back? He said. What's this all about all of a sudden? I asked, surprised by his change of heart. I heard from my dad that even after you quit your job, you've been covering our living expenses. You've been investing since you were working, haven't you? And now you're able to cover living expenses with the money you make from dividends, Jack said, his voice tinged with regret. Yes, that's right. So what? I responded, not sure where he was going with this. I left the household budget to you and my dad, so I didn't know anything about our finances. I thought we were living off my income, but now I realize we were mostly living off yours. I really regret saying such terrible things. I'm sorry, Jack continued, his tone softer, almost pleading. After we got married, we merged our finances, and I began investing my own money. My father-in-law encouraged me to invest, and he was the only one I talked to about financial management and investments. Jack never showed any interest in our finances, leaving it all to his dad and me. So, what am I supposed to do if I come back? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Well, my dad says that with my income alone, it's impossible to maintain the same standard of living we've had. Besides, I'm not confident that I can keep my current job for much longer. I'm struggling at work, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on, Jack admitted, his voice breaking. So what you're saying is you want me to come back so we can live comfortably? I asked, my anger rising. You really have some nerve. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear Jack breathing heavily, trying to find the right words. The reason I never said anything before is because, even though my feelings have changed, I believed that deep down, you still cared about me. But you're not the Jack I once loved anymore, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. That's not true, Jack said quickly, his voice full of desperation. I still care about you. I've just been going through a lot, and I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you, but I want to make things right. Please come back. I sighed, feeling the weight of the years and the pain we had both endured. Jack, it's not that simple. You've hurt me deeply, and it's not just about the money. It's about how you've treated me, how you've taken me for granted. You've become someone I don't recognize anymore. I know, and I'm truly sorry. I've been a fool, and I've let my pride get in the way. I miss you, and I miss us. I want to make things right, but I need you to help me. Please, Linda, come back, Jack pleaded. I need time to think, I said, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. You can't just expect me to come back and pretend everything is okay. We need to talk about this, really talk, and figure out if we can find a way forward together. Okay, I understand, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe Jack, to believe that he could change and that we could find a way to rebuild our life together. But another part of me was deeply hurt and uncertain if I could ever trust him again. I knew that whatever decision I made, it wouldn't be easy, and it would take a lot of time and effort to heal the wounds that had been inflicted over the years. "I still love you, Linda," Jack said, his voice full of desperation. "There's no need for you to say anything more," I replied firmly. "All my feelings for you have vanished. The last time we talked, I made it clear that whatever happens to you and your family from now on, I just don't care. Thank you for leaving me with no trust, no memories, nothing at all," I continued, my voice cold and unyielding. "Wait, Linda, please forgive me," Jack pleaded, his voice breaking. "I'll handle all the divorce arrangements through my lawyer. Don't ever contact me again," I said, my tone final. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number, cutting off any further communication. After that, the divorce process moved quickly, and I made a clean break from Jack. The only person I still kept in touch with was my father-in-law. One day, my phone rang. It was my father-in-law. "So have you had any trouble living alone since you split up with Jack?" he asked kindly. "No, not particularly," I replied, feeling a bit relieved to talk to someone who genuinely cared about my well-being. "That's good to hear. I'm sorry for the trouble we caused you, Linda. When I heard what happened from Jack and my wife, I was so angry that I couldn't help but shout. I shouldn't have ignored the terrible way my wife and son treated you for so long. I'm truly sorry that I didn't do more to help," he said, his voice filled with regret. "It's okay, sir. Please don't worry about it," I replied, trying to ease his guilt. "Actually, I caused some trouble too. After I left, things didn't go well at the house. Even without my income, Jack and Jessica kept living extravagantly without cutting back on their lifestyle. They ended up pawning their belongings and even went into debt. My father-in-law, frustrated with their irresponsible behavior, recently divorced his wife. I see this as a good chance to rethink my life," I continued. "I can live just fine with my current lifestyle, and I want to take on new challenges. I feel optimistic about the future, even though things have been tough." "That's the spirit," my father-in-law said, a hint of pride in his voice. "You've always been strong, Linda. I have no doubt that you'll come out of this even stronger." After hanging up, I reflected on how much my life had changed. I had always been the one to keep our household running smoothly, managing our finances and making sure everything was in order. After we got married and combined our finances, I began investing my own money with the encouragement and guidance of my father-in-law. Jack had never taken an interest in our finances, leaving everything to his father and me. Since the divorce, I've had to make some adjustments, but overall, I've managed well. I've learned to live within my means, cutting back on unnecessary expenses and focusing on what truly matters. I've also started taking on new challenges, exploring new hobbies, and reconnecting with old friends. It hasn't been easy, but I've found a sense of independence and self-reliance that I hadn't realized I was missing. Reflecting on my relationship with Jack, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and relief. We had once been so in love, but over time, our relationship had deteriorated. The pressure from his job, the expectations from his family, and our struggles to have a child had all taken their toll. Jack had changed, becoming someone I no longer recognized. His coldness and lack of support had driven a wedge between us, and no matter how much I tried to reach out to him, he had pushed me away. When I finally made the decision to leave, it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But now, looking back, I realize it was also the best decision for both of us. Jack needed to face his own issues, and I needed to find my own path. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, thanks to the help of my lawyer and the support of my father-in-law. He had always been kind to me, treating me with respect and offering his wisdom and advice on financial matters. Even after the divorce, he remained a source of support, checking in on me regularly and offering his assistance whenever I needed it. I learned that after I left, the household fell into chaos. Without my financial support and management, Jack and Jessica continued to spend recklessly, refusing to cut back on their lavish lifestyle. They eventually had to pawn their belongings and even went into debt. My father-in-law, frustrated with their irresponsibility and fed up with the constant stress, decided to divorce Jessica. Now, I see this as a chance to reassess my life and set new goals. I've been focusing on my own happiness and well-being, taking things one day at a time. I've found new strength within myself and a renewed sense of purpose. I've also started to explore new opportunities, whether it's a new hobby or a potential career change. Life may not have turned out the way I expected, but I'm determined to make the most of it. As I laughed cheerfully with my father-in-law over the phone, I felt a sense of relief and hope. The future is uncertain, but I'm ready to face it with a positive attitude and an open heart. I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned and the support I've received, and I'm excited to see where this new chapter of my life will take me.